state of our country that's in here? You got any enthusiasm for that? Anyways, well, we're doing something about it. David called me about a little over a year ago, right? He calls me up, he's there, what are you doing over there in Pennsylvania? I said, well, I'm busy here, visiting my family and whatnot. And he's like, hey, I want to start getting some things going on over here in California. So he recruited me to come back, and I'm out here, and my name's Tony Pellegrino, and I'm with the American Common Law Academy. And so what I ended up doing was merging. Some of my information says the American Common Law Academy. And so I'm merging with the America's Constitutional Law Group. And so our mission is to educate we the people, right? To understand the power that we have. Okay, so we need to know our identity, standing, status, and jurisdiction. And what that means is that we have standing, we have a voice in this country. A lot of us just don't know how to use it and how to force and instruct our public officials on what our wishes is. And so we are, I'm hearing a number.
I turned it off, sorry.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. So anyways, we got some resources up here. We're impeaching 2 federal judges out of Idaho. We know of any judicial activism that's going on where these judges are like, hey, I'm going to rule the way I want for my political reasons, not because of the Constitution. So we're impeaching a couple of federal judges. Anybody familiar with the gender bender legislation where they want to force this transgender on minors? Well, we filed a remonstrance. We served 39 members of the state Senate and put them on notice saying we can't tell you how to vote, but if you try to pass unconstitutional legislation, we're coming after you for violation of your oath. And the oath of office is one of these deals. I do solemnly swear to uphold the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California against foreign and domestic enemies. And I bear true allegiance to the best of my ability. And so we noticed that these guys don't even read the Constitution. And so they're basically begging us, what are you going to do about it?
Well, Biden doesn't even give oaths of office anymore. They gave no oaths of office for this entire administration.
So McClintock's the congressman here. 10 years ago, he really ticked me off because he says, well, all the problems we got on our government, he said, it's your fault. And I'm mad. I'm like, well, you're our representative, but I didn't understand that the inherent political power is in the people, okay? Not in a U.S. citizen, not in a person. It's in we the people. And so what we have to do is understand when we're going to assert our power, we have to understand that we have it. And when you're in your U.S. citizen status, does it say in the Constitution that under the Second Amendment, that usually gets everybody's attention, the Second Amendment. The U.S. citizens have a right to keep and bear arms. Is that anywhere in the Constitution? No, it's the right of the people. The right of the people of due process, okay? So it's legalese is a different language than English, and we wonder why people have to have a permission to basically carry a gun. If it's an inherent right, shall not be infringed. Why do we have to ask permission? It's like the 10 Commandments. Thou shalt not infringe. Mandatory language. It's not a suggestion. So U.S. citizens have privileges and immunities. Like when you're in class, you got to get a hall pass to use the bathroom. You need permission. We don't need the permission to keep and bear arms. And people were outraged because these illegal aliens are here on the land and they're carrying guns and they can't be prosecuted. Because why? They're not U.S. citizens. Does this start to connect the dots? They're one of the people. They're in their private capacity. A U.S. citizen is in a commercial capacity. You're basically a corporation. You're a corporate member. And so we have to understand and differentiate the difference between what a U.S. citizen is and what we the people are. And so when you hire an attorney to go for you into the courts, and the problem, attorneys can be good, but this is the problem with this country. Attorneys and politicians have destroyed this country. And we are insane if we think they're going to fix it. And when Trump got inaugurated, one of the first things he says is, this is going to be a transition of not one administration to another, but a transition from one administration and giving the power back to the people. Okay, I personally believe that the people weren't ready to take the power that he wanted to give them. And so, you know, we even lost a lot of freedoms under the Trump administration for COVID and stuff. And so what we need to do is reclaim our heritage and reclaim our rights, because corporations are running this country and you got bureaucrats that are going to try to shut your water off. And that's what David's going to hammer on in a second. So we got information here on land patents. If you own a piece of property, you definitely want to put a land patent on. So we have land patents, we have constitutions up here, and I have copies of that transgender affirmation. And so if you want to purchase anything, all this money goes to the funds that we're trying to raise, because of a lot of the cases that were taken, nobody's funding them. Like, we're going after politicians and judges, so we need funding for that, and so we want to hand those out.
Yeah. He said all the money goes to a good cause, which is beer and wild money.
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm chained to my desk, guys, 6 days, 7 days a week.
We have to bring you the beer, is that what you're saying?
Yes. I have a status affidavit up here too. I was in an airport one time, and I showed my picture ID, and the TSA agent goes, "Excuse me, Mr. Pellegrino, your driver's license was expired 7 years ago." I said, "Really?" "Yes, we can't let you fly today." "Oh, so I magically become another person because the expiration date on my driver's license?" He goes, "Yes, do you have anything else?" I says, "I'm so glad you asked." This is a status affidavit. It was filed at the county recorder's office. It was notarized. It has my thumbprint on it. So it has a county recorder's office, which is one verification, and the notary stamp, which verifies I am who I am. And I declare that I'm one of the people and not a U.S. citizen. And so I got on an airplane with this document going from San Jose to Boise. And I looked at the guy, and he goes, "Well, I don't understand this." It's 9 paragraphs. I says, "You have the power to stop me to get on this plane." Okay, and this is what we have to do. There's an anointed word, an anointing basically carries you into your destiny or where you want to go. And when you say no to somebody says you can't do this, you got to say no. You know what? I don't care what your protocol is. The supreme law of the land is the Constitution. I'm giving you this as notice, and if you don't let me fly, I'm not suing TSA. I'm going to sue you. Oh, you know what? I noticed you're wearing a wedding ring. You know what? I might have to bring your wife into that lawsuit too, because you guys are married. You're in contract together. And so what happened was that let me get my supervisor. The supervisor comes back. And it's not about being rebellious or anything. It's just about asserting our rights. I'm going to guard every blade of grass of liberty that I could guard. And so basically the supervisor came in. I says, "Look, you're the gatekeeper. You could stop me from flying today, but I have an unalienable right to travel." Right? We have a right to travel under the 9th Amendment. And you're prohibiting that. You're infringing upon that. No, by the way, since you're a federal agent, you swore an oath not to TSA policy, but to the Constitution, and against any illegal searches and seizures. And so he says, the supervisor comes and says, "Okay, well, we need you to go through the extra screening. Can you go into the room?" I said, "Sure, glad. I'll go into the room." So they went through the room and screened. And so I got through, because most people, when they say you can't, I say no. And so I'm just giving you an example. Once you understand your identity as one of we the people, you stand up, and then you're like the owner, not the employee. You're the owner. If you're the owner of this restaurant and the waitress is stabbing people with a fork in the arm, are you going to fire that waitress?
Yes.
Okay, our public officials or our public servants, our employees, when they're not doing their job, we need to fire them, and we need to understand how to do it. So anyways, I know it doesn't sound enthusiastic because we don't know exactly the steps to do that, but that's part of my purpose. But we're going to get into this presentation here because David has a lot to share, And like our water rights, you have a right to your groundwater on your property. And so David's going to break into that. And when he's done, I'm going to share coordination, how we can enforce our local legislative bodies to obey our instructions. So we have a right to instruct our public officials and tell them we want some policies changed. Like how nice would it be if we had a Second Amendment policy where we can open carry in Oakdale? And that's the power of coordination. We could say we have an environmental issue about safety here because of everybody crossing the border, and we should be armed and ready on our hip without permission to carry and keep and bear arms. So that would take a stretch of work, but I'm willing to do the impossible. Anyways. Huh?
I'm ready.
Okay.
Hey Tony, FYI, if you were traveling as an illegal, you wouldn't need an affidavit ID. You travel for free on that airplane.
With extra.
That's right.
stipends.
Okay, as he explained, I'm David Avila, and we're here to talk about the groundwater issue that we're having. And we have some farmers here, and it's a pleasure to be here. And I thank you, farmers out here that came. It's a pain in the butt to be free and self-governed. It's easy to be a slave because the government tells you what to do, and then you just do it. But to be free, like Tony says, you have to stand up and say, no, this is how it really works. So in the Constitution, this is the foundation. The Declaration of Independence, basically that document was written as a notice to the world that the colonies were pissed off at England. They weren't going to stand under their jurisdiction any longer, and they were separating. And it's quite a long document, but the key component of it says that governments are instituted among men, which included women, obviously, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. That's the key element. That's consent. That's on page 35, by the way, the Declaration of Independence, middle of the page. So they operate by our consent. And so I know that nobody here is going to shoot themselves in the foot. We're not that stupid. So the way they trick us into complying is that our mind plays tricks on us. We have been indoctrinated, and you have to force yourself to think. So everybody knows who little Johnny is, right, in 5th grade? Everybody knows who little Johnny is? So this is a test that little Johnny took. He's got some great answers. But when I ask the question, you're going to have to answer it in your mind, and I'll answer what Johnny did. So the first question is, in which battle did Napoleon die? Johnny said his last battle. Right? No. Where was the Declaration of Independence signed? At the bottom of the page. River Ravi flows in which state? Liquid. What is the main reason for divorce? Marriage. Right? What is the main reason for failure? Exams. Right, little Johnny's got it. So what can you never eat for breakfast? Lunch and dinner. What looks like a half of an apple? The other half. Right? And if you throw a red stone into a blue sea, what will it become? Wet. How can a man go 8 days without sleeping? No problem. He sleeps at night. How can you lift an elephant with one hand? You'll never find an elephant with one hand. If you had 3 apples and 4 oranges in one hand and 4 apples and 3 oranges in the other hand, what would you have? Very large hands. If it takes 8 men 2 hours to build a wall, how long would it take 4 men to build it? No time at all. It's already built. How can you drop a raw egg onto a concrete floor without cracking it? Any way you want. Concrete doesn't break that easily. So I didn't answer one of these this way, by the way. I'm still trying to figure out when Napoleon died or where he died. But anyway, that's how the mind tricks you into thinking. So what I'm going to do here today is I'm going to give you a drink of water out of a fire hose, because what I've been studying this for 30 years, most intently for 3 years. And so we're going to try to do this within an hour. we were just informed earlier that there's a group coming in at 7:30. So hopefully we'll be done before that. But again, I appreciate your being here. If you don't mind, I'm going to start with a prayer. So, dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for this gathering, and we thank you for these people that have interest in freedom and your word, because obviously we stand under your jurisdiction. We do not stand under man's jurisdiction. You created us, and what one creates, one controls. So we comprehend that you control us, and we give you our bodies and our minds as well. And we thank you for these people that are here, and we pray that they have open minds and that they will take something home from this today to make it worth their trip. Amen. Okay. Now, education starts at a very young age. Now, when I was young, my parents really, I don't think we ever had one book in the house. My dad did read the newspaper, but we didn't have any books. And a lot of parents read fairy tales to their children at an early age. Now, what's the point of fairy tales? And I never thought about this until recently, but Chicken Little, right? Chicken Little was running around the yard, and an acorn fell on her head. And so she said, "Oh, the sky is falling, the sky is falling, the sky is falling," and then the rest of the story. But today, what do we have? We're adults. We have global warming, we have global warming, we have global warming, global warming. Think about it. Everybody understands or comprehends that Yosemite was once filled with ice, and an iceberg cut their way through and developed it, cut in half dome. Everybody knows where did the ice go? Oh, we had global warming. It was before we were around, by the way. And then you have the little red hen. Okay, the little red hen, she's got her baby chicks, and she's walking around, and she finds a wheat seed. And then she learns that she's supposed to plant it. So she asked everybody, she asked the pig, and she asked the goat, and she asked the horse if they would help her plant it. And they said, "No, not I, not I, not I." Of course, what I like in the book, it says "not I," which is correct English. Most people say "not me," which is not correct English. So anyway, that's the first lesson, I guess. But anyway, so she goes on and she plants it, and then she waters it. Nobody wants to help her. And then she harvests the flour or the wheat, makes flour, and then she makes bread, but nobody wants to help her. And then she says, "Who wants to help me eat the bread?" "Oh, I'll be there." That we call that welfare today, right? Most of us here work and donate, and people live off of our labor. So that's the story behind that one. Then you have the goose that laid the golden egg. And so the guy that figured out she was laying a golden egg, he was getting rich. But then he finally got to the point where, I'm not getting rich fast enough. So he thought if he opened the goose up, he could get all the eggs. Well, obviously, he killed the goose. That's what we call taxes today. They keep going up and up and up and up. So they're going to kill the golden goose. So even the fairy tales have significant messages if you think about it. And like I said, I didn't really realize this probably until after 6 decades of being a baby. So if you open up your packet there, I'm going to go through page by page. So again, critical thinking. Our government is spending $1 trillion every 100 days. And I don't know anybody that really comprehends how much $1 trillion is. So if I gave you the job of burning 1 trillion $1 bills, 1 per second, 24/7, how long would it take you? Well, in the interest of time, it takes 31,709.79 years at $1 a second to burn $1 trillion. Now, do you don't think that's enough money? They're crazy. Pollution. Again, the sky is falling. In 2018, there was 48,940,000,000 tons of CO2 equivalent contamination in the atmosphere. Well, 42 or 48 billion, 49 billion tons sound like a lot, but let's put it in perspective. The atmosphere, now let's see where we are. Got to change pages. So, the atmosphere, I guess I have to go to my heavy notes. The atmosphere weighs 5.5 quadrillion, and I don't even know how to write that number, quadrillion tons. In proportion to the atmosphere to the amount of pollution, it's 0.000898. That's on your third page there, percent of the weight of the atmosphere. So it's nothing. And to put it in more comparison, so you can understand it, most people know what an Olympic-sized swimming pool is. An Olympic-sized swimming pool, to be code, is 660,440 gallons of water. So that 43 or 49 trillion or billion tons in relationship to the atmosphere is equal to putting 4.5 tablespoons per day into an Olympic-sized swimming pool. Really? Now, is LA a problem? Yes. But we're smart. We can solve a problem. That's where you put electric cars and electric trucks. You don't put them out here. We don't need them. In fact, we need the CO2 because most of you guys have trees or whatever, and if you have cattle, they eat grass. The only way they can survive is those plants need CO2. So to try to prevent CO2 in the atmosphere is stupid. All right, where are we going here? Okay, so basically I'm trying to demonstrate to you how we need to think, because thinking is not easy. It's easy to be talked to, but then to analyze is work. So what I want to do is demonstrate how we have been lied to our whole life. There's two of everything. Now, if you go to the next sheet there, I guess I need to get myself organized here. By the way, one of those sheets actually has the calculations for the $1 trillion. It's in 4 sections, so you cut it and give it to your friends so they can understand how much the government is spending. So you'll see a copy of the front page of a passport, if you look at that. And like I said, there's two of everything. That's what one must learn, is you have to start from a basis. So if you comprehend that there's two of everything, that'll give you an idea of where we're going. So if you read that first statement there, it says, the Secretary of the State of the United States of America hereby request all whom it may concern to permit the citizen/national of the United States named herein to pass without delay or hindrance, and in case of need, to give all lawful and protection. So, citizen/national, what does that mean? Well, in short, you all out here are citizens. You stand under the 14th Amendment, and you are under federal jurisdiction. And under federal jurisdiction, you have no rights. Now, I personally am a national. I have declared that I am not a citizen of the United States, so they call me at the State Department in Washington, they call me a non-U.S. citizen. Well, that sounds nasty, but it isn't, because the United States citizen is a corporate member. I am a member of the United States of America, the 50 states, and I domicile in California. I don't reside in California because residing in California admits that you live within the District of Columbia's influence. So when you write CA on your letters, everything you write CA, that was brought about through the Buck Act, I believe, in the 60s, and that overlaid the federal government onto all the states. So we have 11 federal districts in the United States, and in our case, we identify California as CA. So when you use CA, you are putting yourself as a citizen, and you have no rights because you're under the jurisdiction of Washington, D.C. So, but as a national, they call me a non-U.S. citizen because I'm not a member of their corporation. I am a member of the United States of America, the land, the original states. Well, not the original ones, but obviously the expansion of it. So there are two, we the people. There's a citizen who stands under federal government with no rights, and then there's the national that comprehends that they are free and operate in the private. I can operate in the public as well. You just have to know how to do it. So as I said, they trick us. So there's two languages in our. So when we talk about persons, that's the next paper there. But when we talk about persons, when you and I talk about persons in English, we just think we're looking at each other, we are persons. But in legalese, a person is a corporation. So that being that you are a citizen, you are a corporation. Because in law, a corporation must deal with another corporation. They cannot deal with men or women because men and women are under the jurisdiction of God. But a citizen is under the jurisdiction of man. Man makes laws for a citizen. So I like the word they use in 26 U.S. Code, Section 7701, definitions, number 1, person. The term person shall be construed. And so basically that's what the government does. They construe everything to the point when they write laws and whatnot that you have no comprehension. Because when I read a law and it says person, I just stop reading because I'm not a person. It doesn't apply to me. So that's the power of knowing who you are. Okay, what's next here? So I just explained what the definition of man, woman versus person is. And then there's corporations. The next sheet there, you'll see the Dun & Bradstreet. I don't know if everybody's aware of Dun & Bradstreet. Dun & Bradstreet was established in the 1870s, and that's when they're actually 1871. The United States of America incorporated because they were broke and they needed to be a corporation to get a loan from England and the banksters in Europe, the Rothschilds. So they had to become a corporation so they could deal with the banks that are corporations. So in 1871, they incorporated, and that established started the Dun & Bradstreet. And Dun & Bradstreet basically records all the corporations in the world. So if you want to deal with a nut company in Europe somewhere and you want to find out who they are, you go to Dun & Bradstreet, and if they're a corporation, you can find out all their data. Or if you want to sell milk somewhere in the world, you can find out who they are, what their gross credit is, who's their CEOs, et cetera, et cetera. So you'll notice there that, like I said, there's two of everything. So the city of Turlock, that's their corporate number. County of Stanislaus, that's their corporate number. State of California, that's their corporate number. Superior Court of California, they're a corporation as well. Whoa, so what does that mean to you and I? They're a corporation. I like to call them McDonald's. So an example would be if you get stopped by a Oakdale police officer, when he walks up to you and you lower your window down, at that moment, you and he are on equal standing because he is no more than a McDonald's employee taking an order for hot dogs or hamburgers. Because he's an employee of a corporation. See, what the Clearfield Trust Company versus the United States in 1942, the Supreme Court said that once a government steps into the form of a corporation, it is no longer government. It must operate as a corporation. So that's why they have to make you a corporation. So now that police officer has a challenge. He has to make you volunteer to be a corporation because at that moment you're still a man under God's jurisdiction. So he comes up to the window and says, well, do you have any identification? I see your driver's license. And you say yes. And you hand him your corporate membership card because it's a privilege to drive. And you have accepted that, and you put your signature on that application. So you have accepted the fact that you are volunteering to be under his jurisdiction. And then once that's the case, he writes you a ticket, and a ticket in law, in the Uniform Commercial Code, as I said, a corporation deal with a corporation, you can only deal with a contract. So they call it a ticket, but in reality it's a contract. And I always ask them, not that I get stopped very often, but I always ask them, well, what happens if I don't sign this ticket? Hey, well, I'm going to haul you off to jail. Okay, that's a threat, an armed threat. That's worth $1 million under the UC. Well, it's Title 25, Title 42, Section 1893. Was it 18550?
18 USC 3571.
Yeah, 3571. 18 USC 3550.
$250,000 per constitutional violation for the individual, and $500,000 for the corporate political subdivision.
Right. So basically, it's you could usually run up a $200 million or $2 million bill at that stop. So but what I do is I say, fine, you're going to arrest me. It's an armed threat, which I said is worth $1 million or two. And so I sign it, and I put UD for under duress, or he's going to arrest me. So I'm going to capitulate. I'm going to capitulate to his demand. And then I take it home, and it's a contract. Right? Now, most of you have bought a home or whatnot, so when you go to the title company and you sign that note, they tell you, well, you have 72 hours / 3 days to back out of the contract. So being that the ticket is a contract, I go home and I just write across it in red. You should be 45 degrees in red because that's a lawful recording document. I just put in there's no subject matter jurisdiction because I'm not a citizen. And then I just said I rescind my signature from this offer to contract, and then I sign it Avila, David Anthony, because that format tells them that I am a national and I am not a citizen. If I just sign it David Anthony Avila, that's a signature of a citizen. So I sign it, my surname Avila, and then my given name David Anthony. That tells that I'm a national, and then I send it to him. And as long as it gets to him within 72 hours. Contract is rescinded. It's done. So that's what I did. And then the other thing I do is I have my passport has me classified as a non-U.S. citizen. So instead of handing him my driver's license, I just hand him my passport. I have a card, and then he says, "Well, what's this?" I says, "Well, that's my lawful identification. It's a passport, and it's legal in the United States of America." And so he goes back to his car. He scans the number because it's got a barcode on it. He scans the barcode. He just comes back to the window and says, "Have a nice day, Mr. Avila." Because when it comes up on the screen, it says, "Do not detain, do not arrest." Right. And they know what that means. So they're not going to violate my rights. So that's the two of everything, and that's the importance of knowing how you stand. And you need to know the difference between a national and a citizen. And it's not BS because I just showed you on their lawful document that there are a citizen / national. So you don't have to question it. There's the proof. Okay. So that's the importance of the knowing that they are corporations. You don't understand. Now, you don't want to piss them off and get arrested because their food's really no good. So you don't want to do that anyway. But you just want to understand and comprehend how you can deal with it. Because believe me, they're not trained. They have no clue what you're talking about if you want to push the issue. Which, in fact, I did one time, and they did arrest me. That was in 2016, and we sued the state and the highway patrolman personally. And that was many years ago. That was my first lesson in federal court. And I didn't have time to pursue it, so they gave me a 12B6, and they dismissed the case with prejudice, which means I could appeal it.
They spent about $750,000 fighting you, though.
Oh yeah, we kept them in court for a while, and they spent a lot of money. So that's why when I get pulled over, it says, "Don't stop with this. Don't dick around with this guy because he's going to cost us a lot of money.
Cost benefit
Just
analysis.
let him go."
The cops note on you when they do a check on you to see if you have priors, and they usually don't even bother you because if you ever fought them in court, they put a notification on your driver's license.
Do not detain.
Do not detain. Yeah, so if you fight them once, it doesn't have to be fight them all the time. Just once, you get that reputation that this is very predictable what you're going to do about it. So,
That's when they say, "Mr. Avila, you're free to go."
yeah.
Exactly. So another way that they trick us and control us is everybody or most people comprehend what the Second Amendment is, that we the people have the right to bear arms, keep and bear arms. And so we all know there's thousands of laws against the Second Amendment, right? Right? Does everybody agree with that? There's a lot of laws against the Second Amendment? Well, in reality, there's none. Because every law, and I've read them, not every one of them, but I've read the majority of them. Number one, it says if a person, well, I'm not a person, so it doesn't apply to me anyway, but if a person uses a firearm, and they've trained us, to talk about arms as firearms. In fact, the little store just down the block here is Fred's Firearms. So he's selling firearms, and firearms are not protected in the Constitution. Only arms are. So all laws are against firearms. So if you are, excuse me, this is nothing personal, but if you are stupid enough to refer as your arm to a firearm, you have just stepped into the public. You are a citizen. You're under their jurisdiction. They can arrest you and throw you in jail for a long time. But they don't do that with me because I tell them I don't have any firearms. This is an arm. And in fact, Ty was pointing out just about 3 weeks ago, the 9th District Court, the Federal District Court, which is our area, just said that no, arms are arms, firearms are firearms. That's the distinction you need to comprehend. So it's the word's getting out. So I think we are going to start winning because the more people that comprehend where to stand, you need to stand in one place or the other. You can be in one place or the other, but you need to comprehend where you're at so you don't get yourself in trouble. And all this is leading up to how, I'm trying not to waste your time, but what I'm trying to do is impress on you that the end result is that you farmers, this GSA, right, Groundwater Sustainability Agency, which is established by California law, puts you under the state's jurisdiction, and they are going to tell you what to do. And it's a good guy, bad guy thing. But so I'm getting there. So please be patient. I'm hoping you learn something on the way. Okay. The power of the Constitution. George Washington says. Is that for you? Okay. George Washington. The power under the Constitution will always be in the people. Thomas Jefferson. The two enemies of the people are criminals and government. So let us tie the second down with the chains of the Constitution so the second will not become the legalized version of the first, so they won't become criminals. He also said, in question of power, let no more be heard about confidence in man, our government, theoretically, but bind him down from mischief by the chains of the Constitution. So the word there is you must learn and understand the Constitution. That way you know your rights. Benjamin Franklin said, if you don't know your rights, you have none. And right now, people, we do not know our rights, so we have none, because whatever they do, they just push us around. And like Tony says, if you stand up to them and challenge them, then they will respect you. Okay. So now we go to the next one is the land patent. Okay. So we're getting close. Well, this does start the conversation here in reference to what you need to do as farmers to claim your rights. How many of you are familiar with land patents? 1, 2, 3. Okay. A land patent, most people don't comprehend it. The federal government cannot own land. Okay? Most people think they do because we've been indoctrinated to believe that they own the land. But if you look at the Constitution, let's see, what page is it on here? It's on page 7. That's Article 1, Section 8. Section 8, there are 18 enumerated powers there that we the people gave the federal government. That's it. Those 18 sections are the only thing that the federal government can do with our consent. Now, if they want to do something else, we have to consent. But who would want them to do anything else? They're doing enough to as it is, right? What did Ronald Reagan say? The worst thing you can ever hear is that I'm here to help you, I'm from the government. That's when you shut the door. So anyway, on page 7, about middle of the page, it says, it reads, it doesn't say anything, it reads, excuse me, to exercise exclusive legislation in all cases whatsoever over such district not exceeding 10 miles square, which is 64,000 acres, as may, so they must have permission, by a session of a particular state and the acceptance of Congress become the seat of the government of the United States. That established Washington, D.C. So Washington, D.C. is not in the United States. It is a foreign country. So that's why when we see the January 6 people that are being held in jail without trial and blah, 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 because when you're in Washington, D.C., you have no rights. It's a foreign country. You might as well be in Russia. Why? Because it says it right there in the Constitution. And then also, the first words are to exercise exclusive legislation. That means they make their own laws. So when we complain, oh, why does they make laws and they don't even abide by them? Well, it's right there in the Constitution, dummy. If you read it, they have exclusive legislation over their country, Washington, D.C. Now, the problem is that with that Buck Act, they overlaid the whole country without our beknownst. And when we signed CA or UT or IA or whatever for the different states, you are standing under their jurisdiction. So don't do that. Then it goes on to say, I kind of lied when I said they can't own land, but I use that to get everybody's attention because they think they can. So this is the land constitutionally that they can own. And to exercise like authority over all places purchased by the consent of the legislature of the state in which the same shall be for the erection of forts, magazines, arsenals, dockyards, and needful buildings, which would be like a federal courthouse. That's all the land they can own. So when you go out in the middle of nowhere, you don't see a fort, you don't see any bombs stored anywhere, any ammo stored anywhere, and you don't see a naval yard, they don't own it. They don't own Yellowstone. They don't own Yosemite. They don't own Anwar, right? So when the president said, well, we're going to stop drilling on federal land, it didn't bother me because I know there's very little federal land, and they're not going to drill a well and build a fort anyway. But what bothers me is that our legislatures think they own Anwar, and they capitulate when they say you can't drill on federal land. They go, oh my God, they don't own it. Excuse me if I start to get emotional because I really get pissed off. Okay, back to the land patent. So the importance of a land patent, being that the federal government cannot own land, they had to sell the land to we the people. All right? And they knew that the key thing to their freedom was land ownership, because in England, back in the day, if you were taught, it was a feudal system, and the king owned all the land, and he would lease it to the landlords. And if he didn't like you, and you didn't let him lay his wife or whatever, excuse me, then he would take the land back. And so the founding fathers comprehended that we must have the right to have our land. So the federal government cannot own land, i.e. the king can't own land, and we own the land. And so being that all land was taken by treaty, the United States made treaties here and there with different countries over the decades, over the centuries. So the part of the treaty is that they have to sell the land to we the people, and this is a contract between the United States of America and the guy who bought the land back in the day. And this contract is between him, or the United States of America, the guy who bought it, and you'll notice there I get hit forever underlined, and I point to it there. It says his heirs and assigns forever. Okay, so this contract never expires, and the day that this contract was signed, you are an heir, so you own alloidially the land. You should, but you don't, because we have been tricked into getting deeds of trust when we go through an escrow through the title company. Basically it's a scheme to take your alloidial or cancel this contract, which can't be canceled. You could just consent not to use it. So they stopped using it back in the 30s. So you don't own your land. You record it at the county estate owns it, and if you'll look at your description, it's usually will say that you're a tenant of some sort. And what are tenants? They rent. So you're renting the land. You don't own it. You're renting it from the county. That's why they can charge you rent / property taxes. All right? And we're going to straighten that out one of these days. We can save you a lot of money because you're paying taxes on your trees, right? But lawfully, the tree is an extension of the land, and they can't tax land. We're going to straighten that out for you guys. So then you go on, and then on that same line it says, water rights for mining, agriculture, manufacturing, or other purposes. So that means that the water on your land is yours. It was granted to you back in the day, and nobody can take that away from you. So you don't need a permit to drill a well. Now, is it a good idea to get a permit? Yes, because you want a professional, you want to know the history on the well, so that's logged down. That's a good idea. But if they say you can't drill a well, you say, well, really? We'll see you in court. And by the way, I am drilling the well, but we will sue you in court, and then we're going to sue you personally, and we're going to take your house, your car, and your cabin in the mountains, and the toys your kids play with. Oh, and by the way, how big is your house? I want to make sure my furniture fits it. So, the other thing that's powerful about this, if you go to your Constitution, Article 1, Section 10 is probably one of the most powerful sections in the Constitution. And it's on page 8. You'll see Section 10 on page 8. It reads, and I'm going to paraphrase, or not paraphrase, I'm going to pick the phrase out. It reads, no state shall pass any law impairing the obligation of contract. How powerful is that? It says the state shall make, what?
Take a drink.
Oh, yeah, thank you.
What your whistle?
So, that statement, the state shall make no law impairing the obligation of contract. What does that mean? If you and I have a contract, oh, this is great. My voice is going. If you and I have a contract, no law can impair that contract. So if you're a restaurant and COVID comes and they say you must close down, the health department walks in, you slam the door on their face because you have contract. You can make contracts with your customers, and then no law. So the power of this is that no law can impair this. So when the state comes by and says we're gonna regulate your well, you're gonna say, sorry, I have a contract with the United States of America that was signed in 1848, and my name is on there as an assigned, and the Constitution, Article 1, Section 10 says that the state shall make no law impairing the obligation of contract, and it says here that I own the water forever, and forever ain't up yet, so get out of my face, okay? Now, is that the tactful way to do it? No, it's not. But when push comes to shove, we need to put our finger in the middle of their chest and punch them a little bit with their finger. So, this is a document, and I don't know if you read it. This is a part of the document of the law, and the engineering portion of the law. And you can see there that this is a statement or a report from Sam Bolin Bryan. He's from the Water Quality Control Board. So people thinking, well, we have these GSAs, and if we play ball with the state, the Department of Water Resources, they're going to let us do what we want and whatnot. But the Water Quality Control Board, they're an enforcement agency. So what do they do for a living? They enforce regulations. So if you don't think that eventually they're going to enforce the regulations on your water, you're wrong. They are. That is the intent of this whole GSA thing. Because think about it. If you're farming, I don't know, Don, it's Don, right? Brent, sorry, Don's your brother. So do you have any dry land farming, or you're getting surface water? Or anybody in here getting surface water or pumping? I know Gage is pumping. Yeah. So they are not offering any more surface water, and they want you to stop dropping the elevation of the groundwater. So there's only one thing you can do. You must stop pumping. And if you don't, that's when the Water Quality Control Board is going to come in and say, you must do that. And then that's when you pull out your land patent and say, I'm not going to do that. You need to supply me the water. Because like I said, they work for us. They work for our consent. So what the farmers need to do, and what I was hoping to do is get more of you here, but it only takes 3 in reality. In fact, it only takes 1 and 2 witnesses. Because under the Constitution, we can try them for treason. because they're warring on you by taking your water, or attempting to take your water. They're not taking it, they're regulating it. They can't own the water. They know that because they know that you have a contract with the government and that water is yours. They know that. But they don't need to own it as long as you consent to let them regulate. Right? So you need 3 acre feet of water for your crop, and they're only going to let you pump 6. The writing's on the wall. It's going to dry out. You're out of business. So basically, this guy tells you what he's going to do, and I've highlighted some stuff there. The first thing is they have an enforcement role, first underline there on the left column. And on the right column, it says could possibly, right? So could possibly, what kind of wording is that? That means that they're going to do what they want to do, and you have no recourse because we told you, well, anything is possible. Yeah, so it's possible to shut you down, and we're going to do that. It's in the wording. We told you that. Enforcement role is likely to play out. He's telling you right there that he plans on enforcing your water rights. He's telling you. Go down farther. It says that DWR will be evaluating whether it is likely to achieve your sustainability. So even if you are slowing your pumping down and the water tables coming up, they don't care because they're going to make the decision, not you. They're going to make the decision, not you. And then you go down farther, it says DWR thinks will be sustainable, right? No. We need to have hard numbers. What are we aiming for? What are the rules? When you say thinks, they change their mind because man is man. Man is never honest. I am, but I don't know about you guys, but I am. So then it goes on to say 5 board members. So in reality, we got thousands of farmers in the state, and when the Water Quality Control Board takes over, there's going to be 5 board members telling everybody in the state what to do. Hello. You see a problem with that?
Yep.
I do. And then it goes on and says, the next one there, it says the board will proceed with its own plan. Right? So they're telling you what they're going to do. Like I said, it's a bait and switch. They put the Department of Water Resources up first, and the Department of Water Resources is playing with you and say, okay, this is what we want to do, and yeah, that's a good idea and whatnot. But then eventually they're going to say, well, they're going to turn you into the water board because we didn't like your smile, and then the water board is going to take your water by regulation. That's the plan. So we have to stop this. And the only way we can stop it is you, the farmer, has to take a stand. And you need to force your board members on the agency, which are a bunch of lackeys. I've been to about 9 meetings, and they're all lackeys. All they do is talk about how we're monitoring this, but they never talk about a solution. Not once have I heard they talking about a solution. The only solution they talk about is repurposing the land. Now, isn't that a nice word? We're going to repurpose your land. Oh, and by the way, your 10,000 acres that you're pumping water, we're going to repurpose your land and we're going to make it dry because we're not going to allow you to farm anymore because we're going to take your water rights. We're going to regulate your water away. Now, and that's repurposing. Now, doesn't it sound better to repurpose your land? But how does it sound? I'm going to put you out of business. You're not going to be able to pump, buddy. You see a difference in that? That's why they put this in front of people to say, how can we push this on them and these stupid people so they won't realize what we're doing? We're going to repurpose their land, meaning we're going to steal it, right? Because they want you to leave your land. They don't want agriculture. They don't want you to have water. They don't want us to be free. Now let's see, we go on to page 2.
So are you going to start a petition against the water tunnel?
Pardon me?
Are you going to start a petition against the water tunnel? Because that's really a big threat also.
You know, I'm not too familiar with that. We've been concentrating on Stanislaus County
Oh, okay.
because it's impossible to deal with,
All the
10,000, all these
issues.
idiots, right? So we could deal with the local idiots, and then if everybody does that in their local counties, then we can take over or take it back. And I've got this circle there that says, with the fact that you still I circled this one because there's a lot of people in MID and OID says, well, we have surface water. We got guaranteed. We're not worried about it. We don't have to pump. My neighbor, he's going to go out of business. I don't care, right? And unfortunately, farmers don't stand together. to a degree. But you read this, and it says, with the fact that you will still need to divide the pie. Oh, what does that mean? That means that they're going to take MID's water and they're going to take OID's water and divide the pie. Now, how do they do that? Maybe they're not going to take the water, but they're going to charge you $500 an acre foot because we got to pay this guy that we took his land away. It's a compensatory taking. If I stop you from farming, I am liable under the Constitution, under the Fifth Amendment. You know, so the land or property shall not be taken without just compensation. So if I'm going to force you out, they know the Constitution. So if they're going to give you just compensation, they're going to pay you, they're going to buy your land. But who's going to pay for it? Not them. MID, OID, the people that have surface water, they're going to pay in the form of higher prices per acre foot. So they need to be worried about this as well. Because I know a few farmers that have said, well, you know, I feel real secure because I have surface water. Well, have you read the document? You ain't safe, but you're going to keep your water. You're going to pay 10 times as much for it because you got to buy your neighbor's land as it went out of business. Because we know we can't do that. It's unconstitutional. And if we don't pay him for his land, that's compensatory taking. He's going to sue me and he's going to own my house. So I'm going to charge you because I can do that. I can charge you for your water and do that lawfully. Okay, next document. All right, we talked about the land patent. Does anybody have any questions on the land patent, kind of while we're on that?
At one time you had said that the county was telling people that next time somebody shows up to file a land patent to arrest them.
That's right.
Has that happened? Have they arrested anybody? And is have your taxes fully paid up for your attempt at this?
Well, I don't believe so because why? 99% of the people don't know what a land patent is, so they don't go to the county. So we're going to be going to the county, and it's actually in their code. I forget the section, but there's a section in the California code, which is not law, but they go by it. Like I said, we're going to stand in the public. We're going to go by their code, and their code says that they may file a land patent with no further inspection. So they have to take it. And in law, if you put something on their desk, they have to take that. They are not. They just simply look at it to make sure it's the right format. And as long as there's nothing blatant mistakes in the format, they must record it. And then it's the responsibility that the person that document might be against. It's their responsibility to prove that document isn't correct. It's not their responsibility is to file the records and keep them in order. That's it. So when they turn it down, how big is your house? I'm going to take your house because I'm not going to sue the county because you're the one that's acting under color of law. You're the one that's taking the oath, and you're the one that's violating your oath. So you're the one I'm going to sue under color of law. So, again, some people, well, we're going to capitulate to the state, but again, how good of a job have they done? I don't know if everybody remembers Proposition 1 back in 2018, where we, the people, gave the government $7.5 billion for more water storage. How much more water storage have we had? It's been 10 years. Or, no. 6 years? 18 years. It's been 6 years. How much more water storage have we had? None. And why? I read the law. Does anybody here want to raise their hand and said they read Prop 1 back in 2018 before they voted for it? You're weird.
But they haven't built anything.
I know. That's because if you read this, all the money went to agencies that are involved with water. And there's actually one section in here that out of the $7.5 billion, if you go to page 2, I got it highlighted, it reads $2.7 billion for new water storage. Okay, that really sounds good. So if you're just perusing through this and you read that, you think, all right, we're going to get some water storage. We go down to the next couple sentences there that I have highlighted. it says this funding can only be used to cover costs related to the public benefit associated with water storage. So they build the dam, not a penny of this money could go to the dam, but you could sure put in a lot of trees and some bike lanes and some picnic tables and some dog poop areas. That's what the $2.7 billion was for. And they told you that, but nobody read it. And it passed. The money's gone. We got nothing. I don't even know if we have a dog park out of it. Anybody on that? Okay. Oh, and then again, you want to depend on the government to do something? Well, most of you are from this area. We've had the Highway 120 bypass, right? When I graduated high school in 1966, they started that program or that project. 1966. That's what, 70 years ago already? Or no, not 70. Anyway, 20 and 40, yeah, so like 60 years.
California governors, yes.
Yeah, yeah. So there's nothing
Money
done.
around to cover their budget shortfall like Newsom's doing now.
Yeah, so they haven't done it. They spent bazillions of dollars. I know. My brother's in the real estate, and they bought all the land for that highway to the north, and they decided they wanted to go to the south. So my brother bought parcels at 50% or 50 cents on the dollar. Hello. So do we really want the government to help us with water? I don't think so. So anyway, what I have here is the Shasta Dam. They determined that if they raised the dam, I forget how many feet, 10 or 12 feet, they could gain several 100,000 acre feet. But they also said that no money from Proposition 1 could be used for that project because if we raise the dam, it's going to raise the elevation of the water and it's going to cover more river upstream. So we can't use this money for that. Now, you and I would probably, if we sat in the conference and we had a discussion, probably within an hour or two, we would determine that, yeah, if you raise the dam, it's going to cover more river. Whoa, that's high. That's really rocket surgery, right? Is that rocket surgery? But you know how long it took them? They started this study in 1980, and the study finished in 2015. 35 years to make that decision. And you and I could do it in 2 hours in a conference room. So you wonder where your money goes? You wonder why they're spending $1 trillion every 100 days? It's because the government, we have no lawful government. Because if you work for the government, you're supposed to take an oath of office and then you're liable to we the people. That's why they converted themselves into corporations. That's why they're all corporations, because now they are not liable. They can do what they want. That's why the president can write orders, because he's not a president. Because we have three branches of government, right? We have the administrative, we have the legislative, and then we have the judicial. And so the administrative doesn't make laws. So how can the president write something that tells us what we need to do via a law? Why? Because he's the CEO of the corporation, and CEOs can do that. So we need to challenge him and charge him with treason and hang him, because that is still on the books. If you're guilty of treason, you can't be hung. I'm not sure where we would do it here, but maybe the dog park, right?
Yeah. How fitting.
I never thought about that, but yeah, it is fitting. All right. Going down my list of excitement here. Let's see, where did I pull this out? Oh, I guess the next document there, the one, this is another document out of that law that we're supposed to be abiding by. And I've got it boxed off there, but it reads, another benefit this assessment would provide is compliance with SGMA and avoidance of state intervention. Yeah, right. If ETSGSA is unable to meet the requirements of SGMA, the state may, right, it may determine that it must, right, may and must don't fit together. May and must to temporarily take control and manage the subbasin. This intervention would severely limit local input, require well registration and meter installation, and likely include charges of $100 to $300 per well and pumping fees of $40 to $55 per acre foot paid directly to the state. Oh, why? The state needs more money, don't they? We don't need it, they need it. And they deserve it, right? So anyway, they're telling you what they're going to do. They're telling you that we want to help you solve the problem, but that is not the intent. That is simply to keep you busy. History repeats it, or men repeat history. So back in the Roman days, Rome built the Colosseums. And they built the Colosseums and they entertained the people with gladiators and feeding Christians to the lions. So it kept them busy so they weren't watching while the government was taking all their money out of their pocket. So basically this whole GSA thing is to keep you busy so you don't comprehend what your rights are and tell them that we are going to coordinate, we are going to require you to coordinate, and Tony's going to talk about that a little bit, but in law, they must follow the local policy. That's in law. So if you simply stand on that, you require them to follow your policy. And by law, they must follow your policy. Now, I've told that to OID, I've told that to MID, I've told it to other people. You know what you get?
Plain stairs.
Is that the deer in the headlights look? And they do nothing about it. We've got to get rid of those idiots. Excuse my making a reference to that. I don't think anybody, board members are here, so I'll use that term. But they're selling you down the river. Why? Because they love to get patted on the back. They love to go to the 18 parties and meet their senators, and they just love that stuff, and that's human nature. It's tough. It's tough to be a good politician because I need to represent you, and you, and you. But they all go there for the perks, right? We know that. How do you go to Congress and make $100,000 a year, and in 4 years you come out with millions of dollars? It's not by good investing.
Insider trading.
It's not by good investing. So then you remember I said you must consent to be under their jurisdiction. So they sent out this ballot. I don't know if any of you have seen this ballot or signed the ballot and sent it into the state. But number one, it's not a ballot because a ballot, if you look it up in law, a ballot, you either agree or you don't agree, and it's a yes and no. So it's either a tax or no tax. But in this case, it's a vote for you're going to charge me this much or this much. So that's not a true ballot. It'd be more of an informative, but they call it a ballot because, again, they're tricky. But they want you to sign it, and on the back, the bottom half of that is actually the back of the page. And so the trick here is that they know you own the water, and they know they can't regulate it unless you ask them to. You have to contract with them. They're a corporation. So this ballot, this false document, they call it a ballot, but if you look on the back, how many times do you see the word person, which is a corporate member, and then you see the word contract? So in order to sign it, you have to have the authority to sign a contract for your farm or for your trust or whatever. So why would you have to be able to sign a contract? Well, that's because it is a contract. So when you sign that and send it in, you have given them the authority to take whatever steps they want to control your water. All right? So that, again, everything the government does, you need to stand on and comprehend where you start from when you talk to government is how are they deceiving me and how are they lying to me? Because that's what they're doing. Number one, they say they're government, and they're not. They're municipal corporations. I showed you the documentation that says that they are corporations. So that's the first thing. You say, well, I'm from the government. No, you're not. You're not. You're a corporation, for-profit corporation. So in your packet there, the next document is the National Environment Policy Act. What time is it? Because they have another event coming at 7:30 and we need to get out of here.
6:59.
So what is it?
7.
7, okay. So we need to wind up. So this is the law that requires coordination, right? It's the National Environmental Policy Act in 1969. And if you'll read the highlights there, that basically tells you how the government must act, and basically what it says that they must follow your policy. So if you have a policy, they must follow it. Now, to have a discussion with them, I have no problem with that, but they can't poo-poo my plan. We can talk about it and make a better plan, but they can't poo-poo my plan. Now, at the last meeting, where was that? At the Oakdale Irrigation District, they had a GSA meeting. So they were talking about all this stuff, and oh my God, the water's coming down, and all this. We're spending millions of dollars to do studies to find out how much water's coming out of the wells. You know, how many wells are going to go dry? Whatnot. So I asked a question. Okay, what happens if we got 260,000 more acre feet of surface water, and we stopped pumping groundwater? What would happen to the elevation of the groundwater? Silence. And then somebody says, well, who are you asking the question to? Because it was on a Zoom as well. I says, I don't care, whoever's qualified. So finally some girl stood up and took out, her name was Lisa, and she says, well, obviously the water table would go up and we wouldn't have any problems. And I asked her name because I want to commend you, because normally it would take government 35 years to make that decision, but it took you 30 seconds, so I want to commend you with that. And why did I ask that question? Because 100 years ago, there was a big fight in Yosemite National Park. And San Francisco won the fight. They put in hedge hedging, and San Francisco receives 260,000 acre feet of water per year from hedge hedging. And I've had a woman that has property out, or land out near Waterford. She says that her grandparents told her that there were many artesian wells. I mean, everybody knows an artesian well, natural pressure. And she said shortly, probably years, after they put the dam in, no more artesian wells. So what does that tell you? So 100 years ago, they didn't have the technology we have today. So I'm saying that you guys go to the city and say, hey, we want to make you a deal. We're not going to blow your dam up, but we are going to take your water because it's ours lawfully. Okay? Belongs to us lawfully. Yes. You can't change this. And I'm sure they weren't challenged that way at the time. And I haven't looked up the law. I have read a bit about it. But so you just simply go to San Francisco. Hey, say, you know, there's new technology. We can desalinate, and we have the nuclear power plants, or we have natural gas power plants. So let's do what? We're going to trade you. We're going to require the state to put in as many nuclear power plants as you need, or natural gas. You pull the choice. I don't care. And then we're going to desalinate, and then we're going to take the water back. And it's a win-win deal. Because the environmentalists, believe me, if you tell me to take that dam out, oh my God, they're going to be on your side. We need them on our side. So that's why I say it only takes a few people. But we have to learn to understand. And then my goal is that each of you will go talk to your neighbors, your farmer neighbors, and convince them to start getting involved and stand up. So the next document, like I said, is the National Environment Act, and then you have the Federal Land Policy Management Act of 1976. And then this is the most powerful one, people. So remember, if I call you persons, I'm insulting you, okay? People. This next document, it reads, Presidential Memorandum on Promoting the Reliable Supply and Delivery of Water in the West. Now, has anybody ever heard of this? This was in 2016. 2016? 2018, right. Has anybody ever heard about this? Water in the West. Promote water in the West. No. Why? Because they don't want you to know about it. And this talks about requiring the federal agencies, requiring to coordinate with the local agencies, and obviously the intent is to deliver water in the West. So there's all kinds of existing laws that are on our side that we can hold up. Number one, the land pact. Number two, the NEPA. And then this executive order, which was by President Trump, by the way. And so I have a feeling, and we have to pray that President Trump comes in, then he will back this up, and then we can go to the state and say, hey, this is what our policy is. Our policy is that we're going to take back the water, and you must do that. We're going to go to San Francisco and cut a deal with them. San Francisco will go in there. We'll get the environmentalists behind us. Then we can do this. Then we get 260,000 more acres of water coming down here, And there's a lot of other things we can do with the river and the forest and whatnot. And I don't have time to get into that. But basically, we have the power to do it. So, are you standing with me?
Yeah.
I hope so. And there's information up here with my name, phone number, etc. And I'm going to let Tony talk a little bit about coordination, because we have used coordination in the past in different areas of the country, and it's been successful. So it's nothing new. Yeah, we don't have much time, so very short.
David, a quick question while you said, I'm just curious. I own land on either side of the Stanislaus River, and I have well water, but I have water rights in Stanislaus River.
Yes, I need to study some riparian rights, but yes, being that you have land on the river, you do have water rights. Now, you can't pump and sell the water, but you could. Their wording in the land patent says that the water is for agriculture, manufacturing, mining, and other beneficial uses. That's what it's got to be for. So you have to use it on your land. You can't sell it, truck it. Like if you had a spring on your land, you really couldn't do that, not lawfully. But you have the right to farm and use that land for manufacturing and mining. And that language you'll see, once you see that language, and if you read a lot of older documents, you will see that language in a lot of the documents.
Okay, coordination.
Okay, you can applause now.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding.
You know, the first time I heard the difference between people and persons, my mind went tilt like a pinball machine. You know, and the power goes out. It's like, you know, what's the difference between people and persons? You know, so it took me like 2 or 3 times to get all this information. That's why we give you the paperwork. So I'm going to go through coordination real quick. We're not going to spend a whole lot of time. But Anthony and Tissot created this outline, and it's really in common man's language. It's not full of too much legalese. And so he's going to be in Sonora on June 1st to teach on coordination here, this flyer right here. So he actually worked with our mentor between David and I. His name was Fred Kelly Grant, and he won 59 in a row federal coordination. Did anybody hear about the transcontinental highway that they were going to run from Mexico to Canada?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, he used coordination to stop that way back in the day. And Rick Perry, I think, was involved in the Department of Transportation at the time, or somewhere down in Texas, and he didn't like it. And so anyways, just to get right to coordination, I'm going to read from that sheet that Jenny just passed out to you. So coordination process and legal requirements of agency-to-agency relationship. Okay, this explanation shows how states and local agencies can be lawfully equal to the federal government. Okay, so we actually have power locally. Any land use plans or projects that a federal agency may be considered in your local area. The relationship between local government entities elected or appointed as political subdivisions of the states are legally equal to the federal and state. So what a political subdivision is, it's like a county, like if you have a board of county supervisors or a township type of, those are these entities.
GSA.
The entities assert their legal standing in the coordination process. So everybody's on equal ground, federal, state, and local. Number 1, the coordination meetings are conducted under congressional mandates, federal statutes and regulations, and the appropriate state statutes and codes that apply as well. These coordination meetings are conducted in the spirit of achieving consistency. Consistency is mandated by the federal statute, meaning we all have to agree and come into consistency. So this is mandated by federal statute. Current statutes require all federal agencies to coordinate between local government plans or proposals. Okay? So we're going to come up with our policy, like David is, we're going to come up with this water policy and this water plan, and we're going to instruct our local agencies to say, this is the plan that we want. And as long as it's constitutional and doesn't cause an injury, harm, or loss, they have to at least coordinate and discuss this. Okay. Federal codes and statutes, number 3, and laws are set forth the requirements for the meeting. The consistency mandates are followed and are considered, there's a little bit of Latin here, engidem generis, which means now we're going to flip it. I got this all on one page. legal canon meaning of the same class. Okay? And then it has a federal lawsuit that was quoted in that cited. What this means is, number 4, that the federal and state agencies cannot claim they are exempt from coordination because the statute does not mention their specific agencies. So like I said, the Bureau of Land Management, we know that they're part of managing land. They can't own land. Environmental protection agencies, all these guys are these federal agencies that start enforcing, like what Dave said, their policy. This is not law. They are not part of the executive branch to enforce law. They're not part of the judicial branch that interprets it, or the legislative branch that makes it. And so your local political subdivision is a legislative board. And then, like, I get back to what I first started with. It says the political right is in the people, in every state. So we have to exercise that right. Number 5, NEPA. NEPA requires coordination whether there is an action to be taken or a plan to be contemplated. The Council on Environmental Quality Regulations governs and defines the implementation of the coordination process through NEPA. The Federal Land Policy Management Act, that's FLPMA, defines what coordination is and requires the actions that shall be taken to the appropriate agencies. And then it talked about how Obama actually strengthened it. Believe that or not. Okay, well, coordination with California state agencies. I'm at the bottom of the page here. Title 7 of the California Code sets forth, and then it talks about another law there, applies to this coordination process of some kind and class. So these are synonyms meaning cause and effect, along with California Constitution, California Environmental Policy Act, California Public Resource Code, in addition to the state of California defining environmental justice. Requires coordination for all people. Notice the word people. And all have provision for carrying out the coordination process in the public interest. Okay, I'm just going to stop it right there. So the beautiful thing about coordination is we do not need lawyers. Can I get an applause, right? What do you call a lawyer with an IQ of 70? Your Honor. Anyways, in a state court. I should clarify that. That's in a state court. Our federal judges are much smarter than our state judges. So anyways, you got state and federal. Okay, so we could see how we come out with these federal regulations like when COVID did. If we were on our ball and on our thing, when they wanted to shut down the whole city, the city of Oakdale could say, we're going to create an environmental policy. So when we think of environmental policy, we're thinking about the tree huggers, right? We can't poison, our rivers and, just destroy the environment. But there's 4 phases of the environment, and they're all equal. How about the human environment, right? When the Forest Service wants to shut down trails and everything, then all the hikers were going, hey, what about us? We're allowed to use the trails. We're allowed to go and enjoy nature. They can't be shutting down our lands. Okay, so you got the human environment. You got the economic environment. We just beat the Food and Drug Administration. It was in 2017, not just, but 2017, they tried shutting down a vape factory. The Food and Drug Administration got lobbied by Big Tobacco saying, hey, we can't have these people vaping and getting off nicotine, right? When they first started the vape industry, it was where people didn't have to smoke cigarettes. So they tried shutting that down. We used coordination over there because of the economic environment, social environment that employed a small town like the size smaller than Sonora that employed 250 people at that factory. So you got to factor in the different realms of the environment. You got the human environment, economic environment, social environment, and then the natural environment. How many of those environments did COVID affect? Like all of them. So there was no equal consideration. There's no balance of hardship. They're just saying this is what we're going to do. And unlike what David mentioned about just compensation, if the government's going to force you to shut something down, your privately owned business, then it must give you just compensation under the law. And Judge Stickman in the federal court over there in Pennsylvania, when that COVID came out, people, I think it was a barbershop guy, a guy that owned the drive-in, believe it or not, back east. They still have the drive-in movie theaters. They had the drive-in, the guy with a barber shop, some pastor. There's like 6 or 7 different businesses sued the governor of Pennsylvania under the just compensation. You forced us to shut down. Where's our cut? We did it because of your, what do you call that? Emergency declaration? And who? How many COVID laws did we have? Exactly, none, because who makes the laws? The Congress didn't pass no law. Your state legislature didn't pass any laws, so they were just orders. And so this is why it's important to know you're a people and not a person, because either you have a privilege or a right. And you know what? I use both statuses. I have a state ID. I signed it UCC 1-308, which means all rights reserved. And not that I'm trying to get out anything. They're trying to say sovereign citizens, oh, they don't want to obey the law. No, we want everybody to obey the law, and we're the government of the consent. The speed limit is Department of Motor Vehicle Code. But when I'm going through the high school area and there's a crosswalk at an elementary school and it says 15 miles an hour, I'm going to do it because I'm an idiot if I don't. So we want to consent to those good laws, but these other laws that says I'm going to throw you in jail because you don't have a concealed carry permit. No, I'm not a person. I'm a people. And shall not is mandatory language. You know what I mean? How big is your house? You know. So this is the whole thing. We got to use wisdom. I don't always. It depends. Every situation's different. Sometimes when I get pulled over, if it's a young rookie cop, I'm going to handle it completely different than somebody who can think for themselves. Okay. So you don't want to sit there and argue on the side of the road about this stuff. You know what? Here's my status affidavit. You know, we'll talk about it later. So we need to learn how to exercise our rights. And when you know the law, there's power in that. Even the Bible says, my people who are called by my name are destroyed because of lack of knowledge. And so if God's people are destroyed because of lack of knowledge, you know the government's going to be pulling the wool over everybody else. Okay? So understand who you are, status, and like I says, if I want to rent a hotel room, guess what I have to do? I can't bring the status affidavit and say, you know, here's my status affidavit. I want we the people, rent me a car, rent me a hotel room. So now I got to become what? The corporation, because contract law is like kind. Everything has to be apples and apples and oranges and oranges. How do you think our marriage laws? I think it was Love versus something. I forget the Supreme Court ruling. Black people were considered property, and they weren't allowed to marry white people unless you had a license. We've all went and asked the government permission to marry our spouses. Seriously, we just keep doing what we've always done, and then we always get what we always got, right? So, you know, we've all been duped. We all stood in line and paid a fee and asked the government the permission to enter into holy matrimony, which is a covenant between me and my spouse and God. That's where marriage came from. And so the 3 C's in life are covenants, contracts, and consensual encounters. You could just say, I don't consent. So many people got that shot because they said, you're going to get fired if you don't get that shot. So everybody tells me, Tony, I had to get it. No, you didn't. Do you think I walked through that metal detector, that giant microwave in the airports when you're going through TSA? I'm the guy that's doing this, letting them pat me down. I'm not going through that. You're hitting radiation back and forth on your round trip, bad enough, then you're going to hit through the microwave twice. You wonder why everybody gets sick every time they fly. Your body's getting tore up from the floor up here, and we need to check up from the neck up. We need to know who we are, how the law applies to us, and how to exercise those rights. Because boldness is contagious. If we have 2 or 3 farmers standing up in this region, people are going to take notice. I was down in Tuolumne County in the courthouse, man, and I accidentally had my hat on. Not to be disrespectful, I was late running in. I'm a court coach. One of my guys was fighting a situation, like I'm walking in there late, and I sat down, and the bailiff comes over and goes, "Get your hat off right now!" I'm like looking down at me, and I started taking it off, and I said, "Is that a lawful order?" If he would have asked me nicely, we don't have to stand up from every blade of grass. I like to do it sometimes. It's probably why I'm still not married. But anyways, either you want to be right or you want to be happy, right? Anyways. But anyways, so I went to take my hat off, and I says, "Is that a lawful order?" It's a rule. You stand up and you take your hat off, right? Okay? And then you swear in. And so So anyways, I went to take my hat off, and I said, and I'll wrap it up with this. I said, is that a lawful order? They said, you, outside. So now the courtroom's going, ooh, big mouth over there. I go out there, and he said, what's your problem? I says, first of all, you treated me with disrespect. You yelled at me. I says, and so I says, this is all about respect then. So respect me and ask me nice, but you didn't. So are you going to arrest me or not? Did I break a law? He said, no. I says, okay, I'm going to need your name, badge number, your oath of office, your good face surety bond, and all that stuff. And so at the end of our conversation, I go, you arrested me, yes or no? He said, no. I said, I'm free to leave. I walked back into that courthouse with my hat on. It was a Steeler hat. Maybe he was a Cowboy fan. I don't know why he gave me a hard time, but at any rate, when I walked back into that courtroom, there's 40 people in there, saw me walk in, and I exercised my right, and I sat down, and I did not take my hat off. I was making a point. And then the atmosphere changed in that whole place because they're like, well, maybe we do have rights. So guess what happened? They called the next person, so-and-so case. The guy felt like, hey, I have rights. He went up there and took his paperwork on the counter and goes, 36 miles an hour in a 35 zone, Your Honor, really? And that's how boldness is contagious. Not that we want to cause problems or be arrogant about our rights. We just need to know when to exercise it. So continue on with this education. That's why we give you the paperwork. The first time I heard a lot of this stuff, my head wanted to explode, seriously. And so hopefully you feel a little bit empowered, and we're here to give you hope. There's things we can do. We just don't have to let this tyranny just swallow us up and take every last nickel and dime from us. Yes?
Good question. How did Fred Philly grant use coordination to do something you want to be aware of, or how can we use it to implement, let's say, open carry in Oakdale? Or
okay, so Fred.
How could the farmers use coordination to defend against this draconian new water legislation?
So we come up with a plan and a policy, and as long as that policy is constitutional and benefits the local community and doesn't harm the environment, so it's going to improve for jobs. It's going to improve the social environment, because when you have money, people are socializing and spending money, and it's for the sustainable development for food. You know, we're creating, maybe that's the wrong word to use, but we're sustaining food production in the region too. So we created policy. We take that policy to the Board of Supervisors and say we want to invoke coordination. And then that's where I come in, because of the supervisors. This is what a supervisor told me in Sonora when I was going to sue the health department director, who I did get to resign, by the way, which is a long story. But anyways, one of the county supervisors there in Tuolumne County stood up and says, if we listen to you, Gavin Newsom is not going to send us this money. And I said, excuse me, you swore an oath, not to Gavin Newsom, but to the Constitution, and my rights aren't for sale by anybody giving you money. And, you know, so they're blackmailing these local politicians, and they think, or bribing them, they think they got to do what Gavin says or what so-and-so says. These are public servants, okay? We treat everybody with honor, but we stand our ground and stand our rights, because they're like people like us. They're doing a job, but when they step in that official capacity, now they're a person. Now they're bound to the codes. So we use the codes for government employees because they don't apply to us. And like I said, don't give into all the demonization and label lynching, calling, well, those sovereign citizens don't believe in following the law. No, not at all. I believe I, first of all, have to follow God's law. I'm going to have to answer for it one day. So I'd rather violate man's code instead of violate God's law. So any other questions?
You said that the code says there's a U.S. Supreme Court ruling, and it's 1983, Self versus Ray. The codes, the rules, the policies, the regulations, that only applies to government because it's corporate. It does not apply to us. We're the people.
So if you couldn't...
But with the respect for government, government's foreign. This is part of the real slow paragraph. And with being foreign to government, but with respect to government. But that doesn't apply to us. It's their codes.
Did everybody hear him? He said code is not law.
Yeah.
And that's Supreme Court rule. That's also Peterson versus Peters. And he said Self versus Ray. There's a whole other handful of stuff.
Self versus
And the Supreme Court ruling, like when I was at the airport, you have a right to travel, Kent versus Dulles. So anyways, we need to follow up with this. We got your email. I don't know if you guys want to come down to Sonora and listen to Anthony. He's invoked coordination up in Siskiyou County. Like I says, I was involved in Fred Kelly Grant when I went over to Wisconsin and ended up meeting Judge Gableman, who was the Supreme Court Justice, the president of the Supreme Court Justice of Wisconsin. And my mentors introducing me to the president, Supreme Court Justice for the state of Wisconsin, and I'm shaking his hand. And he goes, "We're nice to meet you, Mr. Gableman." And then my mentor, he's always testing me. He goes, "Yes, Justice Gableman, Tony has a very low opinion of the judiciary," while I'm shaking his hands. He's like, "Well, why is that, Tony?" I says, "Well, I don't believe they know the Constitution." And then he began to tell a funny story about him and his judge. We're at a constitutional convention with his Wisconsin accent. And he said, I said to my colleague, "How many of these people out of the 400 judges do you think know the Constitution?" His colleague said 5. He says, "I think less than 5%. They both laughed. Okay? So your paperwork does your talking, and if you get a bad judge, that's why we have appeals. That's why we have remonstrances. I'm removing judges from the bench. I'm stopping bad bills in Congress. All these crazy spending bills, the people can do something about it. They just don't know. They just complain. Well, most of you guys paid into this system. The baby boomers built this country. They paid all the money into these CAFRs and into these funds. And what's going on is they're giving your tax money to these people that are coming into the country, okay, that don't never worked a minute for that money. And then they're telling you we can't give you a cost of living raise. And we got a lot of our seniors are on limited income. And when you try to get some of these benefits, it's like pulling teeth. If you get injured, you got to fight for your workman's comp. If you paid into the system, go into the corporate and take back. But when you want to be in the private, be one of the people, then you can start instructing your public officials to honor their oath and protect your God-given rights that are secured by the Constitution. The government don't give you the rights. You don't have constitutional rights. You have constitutionally protected rights because they're all men are created equal by their creator. They're called creator-endowed rights according to the Declaration of Independence. So God has given these rights. He's given us the land, and that's the difference between, we're talking about real estate and land, persons and people. So like I said, there's 2 sets of languages, and then unfortunately when I first did this, it's like when I started eating healthy. Read labels. I got to read now? Oh no. Well, they're poisoning all the food pretty much. Diabetes, how many people, I better not go down that rabbit path. And we're here to serve you guys and serve the communities. And I'm telling you with confidence, there's stuff that we can get done.
Amen.
And so if anybody wants to give a donation and wants to take some of this material, if you don't have money to donate, we want you to have the material. But anyways, have at it up here. And the land patent book, I would definitely, if you own property, I would definitely recommend. Those books are for sale, actually. David paid for those. So those, you'd have to pay for those books. But anything on this table is free on the small table.
No, I'm done. I want to thank you all for being here. And I'm just praying that you'll stand with us and that we can challenge the state and be in control of our land and our lives. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave.
Well, that was great. Thank you.
You're welcome. You gonna be in Sonora?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
This land is your land, and this land is my land. From California to the New York Island, from the Redwood Forest to the Gulf Stream waters. This land was made for you and me.
Because I wanna be a cowboy, baby, with a top left back and the sunshine shining. Cowboy, baby, West Coast chillin' with the blues whining. I wanna be a cowboy, baby, riding at night 'cause I sleep all day. Cowboy, baby, I can smell a pig from a mile away.
This land's not owned by you and me. Well, I was walking down a broken highway. I saw a smog-filled and dirty skyway. Saw dying oceans, drank Flint like water. This land's not owned by you and me.
So I'm here with David Avila, and we're going to be talking about the event coming up on Thursday, the 23rd, and that's going to be at the House of Beef, downtown Oakdale. And I'm Ty Robin, and we started the ACLG, America's Constitutional Law Group.
That is us. Yes.
And you want to go ahead and talk about what you're going to be discussing?
Yes. Well, considering that we're teaching the Constitution, we've been studying the Constitution for probably now 3 decades. Unfortunately, the Constitution is not taught in schools, and that's purposeful because they are quote-unquote public schools, and the definition of public is basically the corporation of the United States, and they want to maintain power. So when you work in the public, you have no rights. But the current challenge is that we have in the valley and up and down the state, we've been pumping freely the groundwater because we have an inadequate amount of surface water. And we have surface water available, but it's not used wisely. And unfortunately, our representatives in Sacramento and in Washington actually do not have we the people at the forefront. They have themselves at the forefront, and they must maintain control, and they must keep us as their servants. So right now, the state is coming down pretty hard. They passed a law, I believe it's AB 818, I'm probably wrong on that. But at any rate, it was passed in 2018, and now they're pretty serious about addressing the overpumping of our groundwaters. And naturally, with economics, farmers typically try to get into a situation where they have crops that produce more income. Because as you know, fuel costs go up, labor costs go up, taxes go up, the cost of government in general, they keep giving themselves raises and better pay, hiring more people because they are in fact for-profit corporations. So like any corporation, they want to get larger and generate more revenue for themselves. So, and again, they don't have us at heart. So they are coming down pretty hard, and it's a bait and switch, good guy, bad guy situation. The Department of Water Resources is quote unquote is charged to assist in resolving the issue of overpumping. Now it doesn't take very long, probably about 20 seconds, because I will tell that here, unless they supply us with surface water, there's no way you can farm without groundwater. And the state has no plan to produce or supply us with more surface water. That water, we lose that water in 2 ways. Number one, they don't harvest the timber. And so when we get snowfall, with the huge amount of trees that are in the forests, those trees sustain the snow in their leaves. And water is one of those elements, maybe the only element, maybe one more, carbon dioxide, but at any rate, water is the only element that will go from a solid form to a vapor without going through the liquid form. Everything else is solid, liquid, evaporates. Water can go directly from a solid and evaporate. So when you go to the freezer and you notice your ice cubes are getting smaller, that's why, because they are evaporating. You know, every time you open the freezer, it reduces the moisture content in the air, so naturally it has to equalize.
so the ice evaporates. So what I'm getting to here is that when the snow falls onto the tree, it evaporates off. So we lose millions of acre feet of water during the wintertime through evaporation from the trees. If the tree wasn't there, obviously I'm not saying that we shouldn't have trees or harvest them all. That would be stupid. We are self-governing. We are not stupid. So the fewer the trees to a sustainable point, the more water we would have, because that water, the snow would stack on the ground, and then the surface area for evaporation is obviously very, very minuscule compared to having all this snow on these billions of trees. The surface area, you can understand, is much greater, so you lose these millions of acre feet of water. That's one way. Number two, we let the water go down into the delta. And over the centuries, or I would say century, that we have farmed a lot of land there. The main reason why we do that is for the fish. All right, so historical law, the Organic Management Act of 1897, the act established the Forest Service, and that Forest Service was established for two reasons. Number one was the constant supply of lumber, and as I talked about before, trees. So the state is supposed to harvest those trees to a sustainable point. Makes sense. Are they doing it? No. So does it make any sense to watch it grow and then watch it burn? Doesn't make any sense. It costs us trillions of dollars of economy, and it lowers our level of living standard. So, and naturally, before we had dams on the rivers dried up during the summertime. You could walk across a 3-foot flow of water, maybe 6 inches deep. So these huge flows that go down during the summer are not natural. So the environmentalists can't say that and look you in the eye at the same time, because it's not natural. It only makes sense when all the snow's gone, the water dries up. So, but we need water to flush the delta out, to keep the salt water out, so we farm there. I understand that. But there's technology. In Venice, they use technology. We can put locks, kind of a rolling lock that prevents the salt water from coming in. There's all kinds of things that we engineer type people that have critical thinking can resolve these problems. So by letting all the water down the river, that's the other way we lose water. There's no reason for that. So without supplying surface water, this system, these, what do they call themselves, GMAs or GSAs, groundwater sustainability agency. They're established up and down the state with the different aquifers. Each aquifer in general has an agency, because obviously every area in the state is different. So we want to have local input. The bottom line is that without supplying water, the intent of the state is to take control of the groundwater and your surface water as well. You're already doing that. But the control comes under the way of they cannot own groundwater, because the groundwater is already granted to the farm owner through the land patent, because the United States or the federal government cannot own land. All right, most people don't comprehend that, but they cannot own land. Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17 says that the federal government can own land for only arsenals, naval yards, forts, magazines, and needful buildings like the federal courthouse. That's the only land they can own. They don't own Yellowstone. They don't own all of the sagebrush land and open land on War. They don't own those. That's because it's managed by the Bureau of Land Management, BLM, right? It's land management. It's not BLO, land ownership. So don't believe them. It's SMU when they tell you that they own the land. They don't. So they can't own the water because it's already granted to we the people in the land. The water goes with the land. They can't take it. But they can control it. And if they can control it, they don't need to own the water rights. They control it through regulation. And so these GMAs, this whole program is set up to fail because they're not supplying any groundwater. So the only way you can, or surface water, the only way you can farm is to pump groundwater, which is now going to be unlawful. So they're going to control you. They're going to shut your pumps down. They're going to allow you to pump so many acre feet, and your trees won't grow because they're going to starve. They're going to dry up from drought, et cetera, et cetera. And it's going to damage the economy of the state because land values are going to go way down. It's going to impact your bill at the grocery store. because there will be hundreds of thousands of acres that are going to go out of production. Job losses. It's just in general, it's just shooting yourself in the head. Now, can we solve the problem? Yes. As I said, harvest the trees by law. Organic Management Act of 1897. The law says you must harvest the lumber to a sustainable point. We are not doing that. We need to start doing that. That would prevent the forest fires, because then you'd have all these lumberjacks up there, as we had, what, 70 years ago. There was bulldozers and men up there working with roads, and there was a fire on it, and most of them drank beer every night. So if there was a fire, they simply had enough beer in them that they'd walk over and piss on it and put it out. So we don't need to spend these hundreds of millions of dollars putting these fires out. They're not millions, billions of dollars, which basically burn up all the trees, burn up all the little animals that run around there. It is counterintuitive. It does exactly what they don't want to do. And then the other thing is, we can go back to natural water flows. We don't need to run all that water down here all summer. There's hundreds of thousands of acre feet of water going down to the river. And again, it's unlawful. Organic Management Act of 1897 says that the water shall be for beneficial use for mining, manufacturing, agriculture, and other beneficial uses. And it goes on to say that the water is not for aesthetics, recreation, or fish. So by fortune is to put the water down there to save the smelt. It's not a smelt. I forget the name of the little fish.
Yeah, smelt. It is a smelt.
Oh,
Delta smelt. Yep.
Okay. Anyway, to save that little fish is not lawful. Now, should we be stupid? No. We can maintain the delta with intelligent, addressing the problem intelligently, not stupidly as we are doing now. But it's not about us, ladies and gentlemen. It's all about them, power. For some reason, human being race has never changed. Somebody always wants to be a power, whether it's a Mao or who's in Cuba? Who's in Cuba?
Oh, Castro.
Castro's in Cuba, right? And all these,
Well, who's in Washington right now?
All these people, they want power, whatever they do, right? So we just need to learn our rights. And tomorrow night at the House of Beef, I think it's 201 North 3rd Avenue, North 3rd Avenue in Oakdale. Starting at 5:30 to 7:30, we're going to have a presentation and a discussion. We're going to actually discuss solutions. We're at the GMAs, or DSA meetings. They never discuss solutions. They talk about control, how the DWR, which is the Department of Water, how they're going to help us. And then the Water Control Board is going to put their thumb on you. They're going to put a cap on your well. They're going to let you only pump out so many acre feet, which your crop's going to die. So what's the point? Anyway, so please come. We're going to enjoy it. We're going to have a good time. We're going to solve some issues. Again, my name is David Avila of the ACLG. Thank you.
All right.
This is my right, a right given by God to live a free life, to live in freedom. Talking about